And we are live.
The
A
stage.
beautiful, beautiful Friday afternoon, early evening, morning, wherever it is you're tuning in from. Thank you so much for coming. This is Elle Adda. I'm the chairwoman of Trifactor Engage, bringing you another episode for Breakthrough in Action, our series inspired by the community and for the community as we come together, bridging the gap between you and our expert researchers, our PhDs in psychology, our Olympic level athletes, our coaches, our wellness practitioners, our surgeons, you name it, you've done it. We've all come together to be able to really just share our experience, but also to give one another this community support system and guidance for well-being and to allow us to thrive through this pandemic as well. So I'm really, really excited to introduce you to one of my best friends, my teacher, my student, that inspiring story, and one of the people that really honed in with my resilience during this pandemic. And we're going to share with you our story in just a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to David Webb. He's a pro basketball player, pro athlete. He is a certified yoga instructor and just a certified awesome person. David, welcome.
Thank you, Elle. I really appreciate that introduction.
That's it. I love how I was just like, bam, 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 David. And you're like, thank you, Elle.
I'm just trying to taper down my nervousness a little bit, but thank you so much for having me. I'm very grateful. Just amazing what you're doing, the work that you're doing, putting yourself out there and allowing yourself to, share your gift to each and every one of us with your perspective, with your energy, with your love. And I'm just very thankful to be part of that in this podcast and in your life as well. So thank you.
So guys, if you haven't met David before, David and I have been friends for, oh my goodness.
Almost 15 years.
15 years?
15 years.
But I don't know, we started out as kids, just, having a good time in the city and not knowing which way was what. And on a friendship, we were both athletes, and we started working out, and then I grew up under the tutelage of my father, who's a yoga master, and so I started doing a couple of different stretches with David, and then we started getting really into it. Before you know it, we started talking about the practice, started talking about well-being, and later on we started becoming each other's confidants and accountability partners. And then COVID-19 hit. David, do you want to add anything to that before we get into the details?
Yeah, well, Elle was a big proponent in my change and shift into yoga. So wherever I'm at right now with opposed to yoga, it's because Elle kind of like opened the door for that and kind of like creating a better understanding of my body holistically and how it's supposed to actually feel. So it's really it's really great that we're talking about it, and just really happy about that right now. Excited to be talking about the nitty-gritty of all the stuff that we went through, from the past to the present and also to the future. So
I remember the shift was actually the shift was always hard. I think when you're headed down one path in life. And in your case, it was basketball, and you're a professional basketball player, and you still are a professional athlete. You're headed down this one path, and I remember you were a completely different person, and we just started talking, and we just started practicing together, and David just completely he leaped headfirst into the practice and just pursued it like no one else. He took a break from his professional career because he said that, this is something that is worthwhile. I don't care if it's going to either put a pause or things are going to shift with the direction in my life. This is something that's calling out to me. It's something that resonates with me, that is helping me with my well-being, with my journey in life, and I want to seek after it. And that's what he did. And sure enough, David came back, went back into the league, and he started playing better than ever. It wasn't that he took the break from the sport, but the fact that he learned so much about his body, to have full command, true strength, to be able to not only just be strong, but to be able to move the body and contract it and release it on command. And that's what he did. And so his game just became that much more explosive. And then here you are
Yeah,
pursuing it for your life. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. Well, just this year actually was when I kind of let the basketball go, and I think I already played out my. It's not like basketball was something I definitely subscribed to. I played from high school to college and professionally for a couple of years until this year, and I just decided it was going to be it was time for me to switch and change. And in the beginning of all of it, it was a very messy transition. I went through a little bit of a depression because, of course, you do something for the longest time and you shift into something completely different. There's just so much fear connected to that because you don't know. The unknown is what's beyond that, and you never that can be very daunting and overwhelming, and it definitely took its toll on me. I took my time for it. There was a mourning process for it, but life happens, like this COVID business, and we're all going through it. But it allowed me a lot of time to reflect on a lot of things, and one of them was the fact that right now, because I'm not playing basketball anymore, there are so many different avenues of growth and learning to be done, and it's like I'm hungry for it. I've been in the same thing for the longest time, and honestly, I think it was because I didn't think I could do anything else, and that's probably why I stuck with basketball for so long. But I gained a multitude of different lessons from that experience that are priceless. And I'm just so happy with where I'm at right now, and excited for what the future holds. I'm excited to share a little bit more of myself in increments, because social media is something that it's a language I don't speak, and but I'm ready to learn and take my time with it, and take my time with the process, and just enjoying it step by step.
Nice.
But
I want to
yeah.
talk about quickly what you said earlier. And I think a lot of people go through that phase where, you're headed down one specific path and you've been heading down that way for X amount of time. And so that's mainly most of what you know. And the funny thing, what keeps us from propelling into greatness or into bold choices and to be, courageous in the way that we live, is that fear of the unknown, the fear of,
Yep.
oh, well, I've already gone down this path. If I turn back now, what's that going to look like? Am I going to be, admitting that I'm insufficient or that I made a mistake? And we have an aversion to being vulnerable or being exposed in that way, to have that weakness. And that fear of being exposed literally comes from the fact that we have this belief in ourselves, this core belief that's been conditioned psychologically and biologically wired in us, that we have to strive in order to earn some sort of worth or some sort of right.
Mhm.
And so there's this fear of being vulnerable, this fear of being exposed, and that fear sometimes keeps us enclosed down a path, even though we know that path doesn't resonate with us. We're more willing to stick with the path that we know isn't ours than to be bold to take the path that we feel called to, because we have this disbelief that we're actually going to have what it takes to get down that path, or the fact that we don't know what's going to happen. And it's that clinging to certainty.
Yes, I think that control.
Yeah, the control.
It's control.
And I think this COVID, like especially during this time, like you and I there comes a time, I think maybe during this COVID, because we have zero control, it will teach us that we were never meant to have control over things that we can only obviously control our reactions and all that. Like we cannot control anything or everything else. And this whole experience is really shining a light on that.
Just to supplement what you just said, something that I've been giving everyone an ear beating about is this one saying from Jack Cornfield. He was in one of the episodes of Midnight Gospel, and he talks about tending to the part of the garden that you can touch. That's so true in a lot of aspects, especially with this information-rich world where we're being bombarded with everything, and our mind's just trying to it's just trying to like filter out the right things, but there's just so much information coming in, and you start to get overwhelmed by the profundity and the size of it all, the scheme of it all, and
Absolutely.
You have to kind of like come back into that groundedness and say, I'll tend to the part of the garden that I can touch, and I think when you're able to do that, it creates a shift and a reaction in however small way. It still creates a reaction that creates another reaction. And once we're aware of that our actions can multiply and create other reactions, I think that saying like is so true, especially now in these times. So like, it's very important to be grounded in yourself and tend to the part of the garden that you can touch. And I'm always kind of reminding myself of that, especially in these times, and just working on the things that I can work on. And yeah, it's been working for me so far. There's the shift is really helped. I'm not saying this whole from the beginning it was easy. It was so hard. It was one of the hardest things, like being in lockdown for X amount of months. I think I was dealing with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of different feelings that I wasn't dealing with, right? Because we have the distractions of the outer world. We live in a world where the distraction is the economy, and we're just kind of like, we're the consumers.
The economy. I love that.
Yeah, it is. We live in what's his name? Mark Manson says in his book, how everything is fucked. We live in a divergent economy where our feeling minds are constantly in the driver's seat, and we're just going from one feeling thing to another dopamine fix to another thing, just jumping,
It's our habitual nature. Like, we are not even in control of our awareness, because we are just led by our emotion, and our emotion is not based on logic. That emotion, and it's not bad to have emotions can be beautiful, but emotions at the end of the day, it's not a mental thing, it's a physical thing. They're a makeup of our different biochemistry and the hormones, and sometimes it's not even real.
Yeah, no, the emotions are the body's reaction to a certain idea, a thought, something that's happening in the moment, and they're very important. Definitely, they're precursors to keeping us alive. They've kept us alive, helping our evolution. Emotions are valid, right? But there has to be a mix. There has to be like a balance or a harmony between the conscious mind and the feeling mind. There has to be like, you can't just have this conscious mind saying that everything is black and white, this and that. There has to be an intuitiveness and this, like, the feeling brain, or the feeling brain inside of us definitely is needed. So we just need to be able to harness it and balance it together. So there has to be a right proportion or the ratio for this. And therein is the balancing act that we're constantly on. But I think awareness is one of the first steps to it, and being able to mitigate it and allow it to kind of like harness that, So
I think that's like what you said, and I want to get back into tending to the part of the grass or the garden that's in your
you can touch.
Later on in our talk, because we talk about action and taking back the power, or taking back the direction, or the driver's seat, rather than taking a back seat to our impulses and our habitual patterns. And so, like you said, first it's awareness, and it's so relevant right now because, as you said, it was the same thing with me. My lifestyle was so erratic, even though I grew up with a background in wellness, even though I'm an athlete, even though I eat very well. My well-being, there was no balance. My schedule was always erratic. I never had a set bedtime, nothing. I was constantly on the go. I was in the airport at least 4 times a month. I was in a different country, and I was just all over the place. Like you said, distraction is the economy. And that was my nature. But it wasn't actually my nature. It was the nature that I sold to, because I just thought, well, that's just how it is. And little did I know that all of a sudden, when all of the distractions are gone, and our distractions are actually our coping mechanisms. They're our excuses. We say it's just we've been distracted, but we seek after them to distract ourselves from what is actually going on. And this can be all these different facades that we put on, which is usually different for whoever we're speaking to or whatever situation that we're in. And I became really good at that. I became really good at being the chameleon, that I almost started fooling myself. You know, when you do that? And I think now that all of a sudden, all of those are gone, we are not defined by where we go or our work. All of a sudden, we are just sitting at home.
Back to zero. Back to zero.
We're sitting at home. So who am I outside of work? Who am I outside of these things that I do? Who am I behind the feed, the clean feed that I project? Who am I? What home do I live with? What relations? What is the real status of the intimacy of my relationships at home? What life have I created? And it's all of a sudden there's this giant mirror shining at us, exposing ourselves. And that is very, very painful, because
daunting.
Because now this is the time when, and I called you, David, you know, I called you crying, because it was the shedding of the skin, that awareness. That self-awareness begins with sitting with the discomfort, because now that the distractions and the coping mechanisms are gone, when there is stillness, then the truth starts getting louder and louder. And we have all of a sudden, no way to shut it off. And that is painful, because we have to learn to accept it, because it's not going to go anywhere. And that whole shedding of the skin that you and I talked about a lot, you know, understanding like who we are outside of the pretty picture,
confines of our home.
Yeah. And not knowing the answer all the time, that's scary. And to be okay with not knowing the answer, and to be okay with just simply knowing that, okay, you know what, I don't know, but this is what I know what I want. I know what I want to be. I know what I want. And having the courage to share that with someone. More importantly, to share that, the awareness at the end of the day, like, yeah, it's different when you're aware of it yourself, but to have the courage or the step to share it with someone, to share that vulnerability, that is the first step to breaking through.
Yes, definitely. I agree with that. I think it's just about shifting the lens of the perspective about vulnerability. We have this idea that when you show emotion or your vulnerabilities, it's like you're weak. But in this day and age, I think it's, you know, it's becoming more and more, the paradigm for it is becoming more and more evident that it's shifting, it's changing. And that's great, because the more layers we add to the feelings that we're not addressing, the harder it is to be the person that we actually want for ourselves, you know. And I think during this whole quarantine, there were so many layers. Each and every one of us had so many layers that we put under the real source of.
I still have
the
them.
comfort and the feeling. We're still working on them. We're always going to work on them, but we get closer and closer each day. Every day is a process going through that. And you know, there are days where it's amazing and everything's flowing, and you're able to work through those. And there are days where it's a little bit harder, and you have to push a little bit harder. But those are that's part of this whole process of growth that's happening right now for each and every one of us. And you know, there's just, I hate to like bring it up, but this whole COVID thing, as bad as it is, there's so much silver lining to it as well. You know, just if you have enough awareness to be able to look at it and actually say like, okay, this is something that definitely was lingering, was festering, but because of the situation, the awareness allowed the presence and the consciousness of that awareness allowed it to kind of like come to light,
Yeah.
so you can deal with it. You can't fight an enemy that you don't see, that you keep on hiding between the layers of distractions and
it's not there.
excuses and justifications, right? So I guess right now we're all winging it at this point, but at the same time, we more or less have an idea of the things that we need, the habits that we need to nurture. We more or less have an idea of the direction that we want to be going, and more or less a clear picture of it, especially these coming months. Like when the quarantine started, I think the biggest fear was like, I still don't have a job. I don't know what the hell is going to happen. I'm jumping into a completely new arena. I'm not used to it. And again, we go back to the unknown, the fear and the vulnerability of that fear, and being able to deal with it and actually talk about it. And the sessions that we had where I opened up to you and saying like, man, it's tough. I don't know what the hell is going to happen. And you just being able to be present there. Those were the parts where I think there's a lot of exponential growth that happened in me. And for that, I'm really grateful. But yeah, just kind of like riding the wave at this point in time and just kind of enjoying it. So yeah.
It's funny you should say so. Like obviously in the beginning, it's just a very, very painful process to begin with, because you have to, when the awareness is there, because this whole thing is forcing us, if anything, the reason why there's a silver lining or an opportunity is because this is waking everyone up. We've all been on autopilot, on reactivity mode, not proactive, reactivity mode, going, following, as you said, following the distractions. This is like, nope, wake up, sorry. This is real. And
this shit ain't working.
Yeah.
This shit ain't working.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden there's this fork in the road and we're all like, ooh, what are we going to do? And, especially in those moments where it's when you're squeezed, when you find out what you're made of. Or when you squeeze and you find out what you're made of.
Nice.
It's like a toothpaste, how you're not going to know if it's mint flavored or, this is a terrible analogy.
No. I think maybe you can kind of like attest it to. You gotta know if the juice is worth the squeeze. Does that help? If the juice is worth the squeeze.
Like, how do you know? I don't think that chaos reveals character. And when you were squeezed. When you were squeezed, this is how we find out what we're made of. And if we find out what we're made of, and guess what? Sometimes we're not always as strong as we think. And to be okay with that and to say, to have the humility and be, you know what, David, I'm not doing well. And sometimes that's the first step of vulnerability, no matter who you're talking to have someone that you can literally just say, and it doesn't have to be your best friend. You can have like a support group, like a support group that we have for Breakthrough in Action. It's a safe space where people just get together and like-minded people, everyone who's going through the same thing, and to just say, you know what, I am not alone. We're all in this together, even in our isolation. And there's comfort in knowing that, not comfort in knowing that other people are suffering, but comfort in knowing that you are not alone, and that even even in your pain. And like, that's why, how many times you see all these, these ridiculous results for survivors, for people who've gone through such terrible tragedies in their life, because then they've been able to find a group or a community of people that they're able to connect with on that level. And as terrible as pain is, and painful as that vulnerability may be, it is the source of so much damn courage. It is the first and foremost source of courage, because we are used to putting facades. And I can be the number one to say that, like, before I got into self-awareness, that I was flat out liar. That wasn't all these different masks, even lying to ourselves. And so all of a sudden, when we have the courage to say, hey, David, I'm not right. I'm not okay. I don't have it all together. And yeah, I'm in pain and I don't have the answers. That humility, that boldness to be seen exactly as you are, no less, no more, but to be honest, that's authenticity. And if you can be bold in your authenticity, it only takes one step of vulnerability for you to get the ball rolling. And before you know it, if you can be one of those people that says, you know what, this is who I am right now, in all my glory, in all my brokenness, in all the shades of gray, in all the color, in all the things that I may not be very proud of, but you know what? This is who I am anyway. To have that authenticity, that's courageous, but it only begins with the point of vulnerability.
Yeah. To touch on that as well, I think when you're able to kind of like go out on a limb and do that as well, that's like the reaction that you were talking about tending to the garden, part of the garden that you can touch, because that creates that vulnerability, that openness creates an opening for another person to have the option to, you know, it's kind of like your light allows other people's lights to shine as well. And, you know, it causes that reaction. I think that's definitely a reaction that we all need. Yeah, you know, an agent, a catalyst that we all need at this point in time. This isn't something, the stuff that we're going through right now, you know, the trials and stuff, the feelings, this isn't something that you can just sweep under the rug, you know. I was like, you can use the analogy of a dam. You can always, there's a dam, right? Water's not going to get through that. You segue that, right? But water will always find a way. The emotion, or the source of it will always find a way, you know. So you divert it one way, it goes another way. So there has to be a sense of like ownership to it, an awareness to it, you know. And it's also I think shifting the perspective of like how you see it, you know.
That's a good one.
You shift the perspective from, oh, it's weak, you know. No. I don't know how I'm gonna use this, but do you remember 8 Mile?
Yeah.
With Eminem, right? Okay. So
where are you going with this?
Wait, I'm gonna try to pull this out of my ass, okay? I'm gonna try to pull this out of my ass. Okay, let's see if I can do this. So they're in a rap battle, right? Boom, boom. They're spitting the vulnerabilities of the person, right? The person's like, your mom's this, that, right? And the person, of course, regularly will get hurt. And, you know, of course, they give this facade that they're not hurt, but it's like knives that hit you, right?
Yeah.
So at the last part, homeboy that's going against B Rabbit, right? Says his spew, it's fucking fire, it's venom, right? And then B Rabbit starts rapping as well, but instead of like shooting knives and things at him, he shoots his own vulnerabilities, right? He shoots his own vulnerabilities about him living in a trailer park, him not having money and not being broke, right? Yeah. And at the end of it all, he says, here, tell me something I don't know about me. And if you put your vulnerability out there, just like that person, just like B Rabbit,
take the power away.
You take the power away from other people. It's like, it's just kind of like, here, boom. What do you do with it? And it kind of creates a reaction in the person like, oh no, I can't do anything. Yeah. You already kind of like, it doesn't have power over you, and it doesn't have power over me as well. So I can't use it. You know, I think that's the main thing that people are afraid of, being vulnerable, because they put themselves out there, and when they put themselves out there, they feel they're going to be chastised, castrated, you know, judged and shit like that. But if you put yourself out there with the intent of like not with a perspective of not of strength in the vulnerability, then it ceases to become power become power for the person that's doing the persecuting or judging.
The ultimate form of fear exposure, like the Stoic belief, like the only way that you can actually destroy fear, because fear isn't real. It's false evidence that appears real or appears like, that's what it is. That's the acronym. And it's just a relationship with it. And the only way to break the illusion is to step inside the illusion and say, oh, I was wrong. Otherwise, if you don't step close to the illusion, it's going to be far enough away for you to continue believing that it's actually real.
It's kind of like the unknown.
Yeah, that's the
kind of like the unknown.
Like and the best thing is that the motivation or the accomplishment, it's when you face fear, like being vulnerable and putting yourself out there, you not only take the power from other people to use that against you, but you take the power sometimes away from the fear itself. If I come out and say, you know what, I don't have it together. You know what, I did come from, broken
present.
past. You know what, I screwed up so hard. I hurt people that I love. You know what, I'm not proud of certain things that I did. But if I say that, and if I own up to it, and I actually take responsibility to it, that is freedom. Because then no one can use that against me. And when I open up to that and I say it out loud, all of a sudden the fear has less power over me, because I've stood up and I said, you know what? And then, yes, that's true. And then I'm still here. And then it's just finding a way. Then obviously you need to be able to, in order to get that vulnerability or the courage to be authentic, we have to first accept ourselves. So let's take a few steps back. How do we, after discovering in our, journey of self-awareness during COVID, when we see what we're actually dealing with without the distraction and the coping mechanisms, how do we come to a place that accepts who that person is before we can be courageous enough to be vulnerable?
Okay. I think that comes from being able to understand that we are constantly evolving, and we are doing, all right? We're never not doing anything, right? But people have this idea that, the saying that can't teach an old dog new tricks. That idea is flawed in a sense that we are always doing something. We're always evolving. I think it's also not being able, understanding that you're not married to an idea. At one point we subscribe to different truths. I subscribe to the truth of basketball.
Different truths. I like that.
I subscribe to the truth of basketball. It was a religion for me.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything else but
people.
Yeah, especially in this country.
Becomes an
and now I think the biggest takeaway to be able to be accepting for yourself is to realize that you're not Elle, you're Elling. So you're a verb, you're a constant verb. I'm not David, I'm Daviding, because I'm constantly growing, right? And not being married to this concrete idea of your identity, and knowing that you're like a skin. Sorry, not a skin. You're like a snake that's constantly shedding its skin with new truths and new ideas. And once you realize that, you can't really be hard on yourself. You just accept you for who you are at this point, and realize that you can go from there. And it's just a game now. It becomes a game of like, what am I gonna put in my templates of who I am?
Yes. And I think it is the understanding of the truth of impermanence, that nothing will ever stay the same. Eventually everything ends, life ends. The fact that we cannot control everything, that there will always be uncertainty. When you say you can't train an old dog new tricks, unfortunately that's our kryptonite, because that is what's keeping us from true awareness. Because if you say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, that means no matter how smart and wise and all knowing this old dog is, you find the moments or the parts in your life, the aspects in your life that you are certain of, and I will show you where you stopped growing.
Yes, definitely.
And that's it. And so that's what keeps us so hard and so closed up.
Rigid.
Rigid. And so if we were always in that lens, that scope. We're always looking through that perspective. How are we exactly? They're blinders. Our peripherals are not open to everything else, so we're going to miss opportunity. We're going to miss opportunity because you know what? We're not actually looking. We're not paying attention, and we wonder, oh, my life didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to, or it's other people, or I did the work and people just weren't responsive, or they didn't give me the support that I need. You know what? You have the power to direct, not control, direct your personal reality and what you put out in the world. And that is a responsibility that we, myself included, didn't want. We want our freedom, but we
don't want the price for freedom.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, the true freedom is the discipline. The true freedom is making the hard choices. Because otherwise, if we don't make those hard choices, we are slaves to impulses. Comfort is the enemy. We're so afraid of comfort. That's why I was so afraid of comfort. For me, that's where my anxiety disorder came from. And obviously because I was diagnosed with ADHD, I needed control. I needed to be certain of something. I needed to be comfortable. If I wasn't comfortable, I was afraid of the unknown and what the unknown might bring. And I can't control that. I want to be comfortable. But you know what? If we're comfortable, how does a diamond get formed? How does something get refined? Pressure. How does something get refined? Through the fire. How does a muscle grow? It breaks, it tears.
Through hormetic stress.
Exactly. Like that is one certainty. That is one law of nature, law of science, that growing pains, everything is everything beautiful. If you count back, David, in the points in your life that were so unbelievably bloody painful, and we've sat there together through a lot of it. In hindsight, how many of those experiences were the gateways to your breakthroughs?
Wow, that's a great question. It can segue into that story I always tell you about the farmer.
Yeah.
maybe
the Taoist
right?
Story.
What's that?
The Taoist story, perhaps, maybe.
Yeah. Perhaps, maybe, right? You never know when. Again, like who we are, it's ever changing. So a situation that you feel where it was like bloody rock bottom, right, can shift and become something beautiful in the future. It could be the catalyst for finding something beautiful. I think that's just the nature of the universe, where it's dualistic and it's just a wave. It's ebbs and flows of waves. Sometimes you get big waves, sometimes you get small waves, sometimes you wipe out, you get on back on that board, and you just kind of like keep on finding the right waves for you, and you just ride them as far as you can go, and you're in that moment, you enjoy that moment, and then you go to the next one. But it's different each and every time. Each and every wave is different, just like each and every different moment for each and every one of us. So
sometimes we learn the most by crashing.
Oh yeah, definitely. Of course, because you get the awareness of like, oh, what did I do wrong there?
It's the humility. Oh wait, so I haven't got it all figured out all the time.
I think that's another thing. I think that's another thing. Also, like being able to be comfortable with yourself is having the humility that I don't have the answers. I'm going to be wrong.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. And that's another method of helping yourself be more comfortable with yourself. Mm-hmm. I think I grew up, I never had that in me where a really good friend of mine kind of taught me this, and it never occurred to me. And I was going through a really dark period in my life, and he told me that, man, you gotta be able to look at yourself in the mirror, like look at yourself in the eye, and actually like the person that you are.
Yes.
And I can say for the longest time that wasn't the case for me. I honestly couldn't look at myself in the mirror. There was just so much disdain and displeasure with where I was and what I had done, who I had hurt, what I failed, and I think shifting the perspective from failure to just learning, right? You talked about earlier. You talked about earlier that oh man, I had it in my head. Talked about earlier, like when you hop into something new, it's a pitchfork and you have to go back. You don't go back. You have that knowledge, right? And it's just you moving forward in a different direction, not in the straight line that you
You
originally
don't go
thought you
back.
were going.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
what
life
we learn,
isn't a straight line.
exactly. What we
It's
learn
not a
in
straight
growing any
line.
skill, what you learn in basketball, the discipline that you learn, the movement in your body, how you interact with other people, you don't lose all of those skills. You
I
repurpose
know.
them.
Yeah.
And it's like what we were saying earlier. So then how do we, because we've all been there. And I think a lot of the times this is actually a really good exercise, is to be able to look at yourself in the mirror. Now that you have the awareness of the chatterbox, first of all, to know that the chatterbox one is not actually who you are.
The
Having
roommate.
the understanding, it's the roommate. Yeah. And so guys, if you haven't been listening to the podcast, or you are not very aware of limiting beliefs and our biological conditioning, our brains are built to survive, not to enjoy or to be pleasurable. They're built to survive, and so they're built to overthink and now that we have so much stimulus, it's working, the brains are working against us. And because of our psychological conditioning growing up as children, we misunderstood things that got stored in our subconscious without us actually knowing it, because of the certain reactions that we had and coping strategies. Fast forward, this is how we are. So it's first the realization that, oh, you know what, that voice in my head, that's not me. That is the sum of certain thoughts, certain fears, certain experiences that have left a little mark and that I haven't actually addressed or dealt with. Because our thoughts, if we don't address them, they occupy mental real estate. It's just a neurological condition that they're like roots in our head. And they change the fabric of how we interact with other thoughts and other emotions. And so it's first not identifying with it. And the practice that you and I, have always shared, David, is, the practice of self-awareness and not identifying with these thoughts, non-reactivity. Can you talk a little bit about that? And how that got you from where you were, looking in the mirror, saying, you know what, I can't, it's hard to even, and that was the same thing. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror and say the words, I'm deserving, I'm worthy, I'm a great person, I have a good heart, I'm very talented. It was almost like my body was rejecting the words. And
I couldn't look at myself in the eyes.
I forced myself to say it in front of the mirror. I was lying and no one was around, so I didn't want to do it. So how does the practice help us? This is the practice of self-awareness. So how does the practice help us pay attention to the narrative of that annoying roommate, of that chatterbox? And how does the practice allow us to say, you know what, this isn't me. I'm going to separate myself from it, observe it, and maybe look at it in a non-judgmental way. And how does it get you from there to where you are right now?
Okay. All right. So I think the self-awareness comes in when you realize that that roommate, yeah, like you said, is separate from you. But understanding that roommate is always going to be there, because that's our mind's way of mitigating danger, right? That's why we have that idea of not jumping into the unknown, because our minds don't know the equation to the unknown, right? So that's why people stick with old habits. Yeah, because that's our evolutionary standpoint. That's why we've become what we are today, from playing it safe and allowing the brain to mitigate fears and calculate them, and that's why we're here today. I think the self-awareness also comes in, like, realizing that roommate, it's always going to be there, right? But is that roommate going to be a neurotic, crazy person? Yeah. Or is that roommate going to be your best friend, right? Now, that best friend or that neurotic person that's inside of you is being fed content, right?
Yes.
Now that's the food, right? The content that you're ingesting, whether we like it or not, subconsciously is being eaten by these roommates. Now, you can have a crazy neurotic roommate that has junk food. When I'm using the metaphor for information, news, stuff that stresses you out, right? Words that are negative, right? Or you can feed this roommate good, succulent, abundant food, grass-fed, beef,
Gratitude.
vegetables.
Grass-fed gratitude.
Sorry. Hey, that's a good one. Grass-fed gratitude.
Gluten-free relationships.
Sorry to the vegans. All right. I subscribe to grass-fed. That's my standard for a really good meal, I would say. All right. Anyways.
Thich Nhat Hanh was the one that said the best way to and the only way really to remove a limiting belief or a toxic thought is to replace it with an even stronger truth.
There you go. There you
and
go.
It's not about
the right content.
Like distracting from the thought. It's the fact that you cannot just say that this is not true. The best way to disprove a lie is to shine a light on what is actually real. Because if our
light of awareness.
Yeah, if our focus and awareness and our gaze is fixed on something that is real, it is impossible for the untruth to exist because your focus is on the real. It's on the truth. It's like saying, okay, well, what if I'm afraid of, this is a really bad analogy. I wish I had a better one. So, I'm not going to use it. No, I'm going to use it. Even if I sound
was it as bad as the M&M one? That's for sure.
I like yours. I'm going to forget it now. So we need, it's all about where we're looking, And so if I'm, let's say if I'm on a boat and it's sinking and there's a big storm and I am looking at the waves, I'm going to freak out. I am really going to freak out. If all of a sudden I see instead the lighthouse that is shining a light on the boat and I focus on that, then I know that even if the waves are crazy, I see that fear. Even if the waves are crazy, my fear isn't the waves. My fear is what the waves will do to me. But because I see this lighthouse, it's reminding me of the truth that help is on the way. But if I'm looking at the waves, I'm going to be focused on how big the waves are and how dangerous and powerful they are. I'm not thinking about the light. And so that's the experience that I'm going off of. So it really is about where we choose to fix our awareness. And our awareness, as you said, in this economy of distraction, we have evolved into this place where it is so difficult. That's why we have rising cases in anxiety and depression and in panic attacks and PTSDs, because we're in a place right now. We've adapted our environments, but we have not adapted to our environments. We were not designed to handle this much stimulus. And so our brains are working overdrive. And so we need to develop, if there's one skill that we need to develop, is where we are able to harness our attention.
That awareness.
That's where our attention and focus goes, that's where our energy goes. Where our energy goes, that's where meaning goes. That's where action goes. That's where results goes. That's where reality and experience is formed.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I think a great way to kind of like look at this as well is you use the body as an anchor for your awareness.
Yes.
And if you're able to kind of like use the body as your anchor for the awareness, the thoughts don't push you away so much. If you're grounded in your body like really well, it's kind of like a rock that's being pushed by just thoughts, and you just allow the thoughts to push you, right? And you're grounded. It doesn't matter. So I think being able to hold that intention, hold that focus in the body is definitely something that people can look to in times like this. And also, like, the reason why there is anxiety, there is panic attack, is we evolved to a point where we're always looking, does that bush have a predator? Does that bush have a predator? Is there a bear there? Right? But we don't have that anymore. We evolved so quickly, we don't have that anymore. We don't have those problems now. Now our minds,
it's like what are they saying about me? What are they saying about me?
It's shifted. We're looking for ghosts where there aren't any ghosts now, because we gave the mind a task so hard to kind of like
I'm not supposed to decide whether or not this is your job. I'm only supposed to tell you whether or not the snake is going to kill you. Why are you giving me this job?
Jesus Christ. I don't have to, you didn't give me the job. This isn't my job description of choosing what Instagram filter to fucking use,
We weren't designed for this environment.
No, definitely.
And so there's nothing we can do. This is our environment. So what do? We have to balance it with our lifestyle. Like you said, our distraction is our attention is going to be pulled into random places that is going to try to steal our well-being. And so we need to be very intentional about the environment that we create for ourselves, the lifestyle
And
that
the
we create
content.
for ourselves. That's our first line of defense, is how we're going to not just survive through that, but actually be able to know it. You know what? I'm going to look at it the stoic way. I'm going to see this instead as an opportunity for me to grow. Not always easy.
Just using that awareness to shift that perspective. Definitely.
So it's like what you said, like with the body. Like what's a if you can share like a very, very brief, very simple way for people to get in touch with that awareness, because it is really, really hard to focus the mind, to bring the mind to stillness. And so the body
Definitely.
is a great tool of doing that by observing.
Okay. All right. So an easy tool I was able to kind of like dive into during this quarantine is the breath. And you've heard a lot of my ear beatings about the breath, but I'm going to say it to the high heavens because everyone should know it. It should be
good. I want to hear it again.
It should be common knowledge to people.
It should be in school. We should be learning this in school.
Yeah. So, just simple exercises of nasal breathing, right? Pronouncing your exhalations. So you can use a count of 4 inhalations in, 8 exhalations out, right? Yeah. So what happens is when you start using the 8 count for the exhalation creates a parasympathetic response in the body. So that's the rest and digest, right? When you inhale, when you pronounce the inhale, let's say you shift it and you create the 8 as the inhale and the exhale at 4. That's when you start to use your sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight. Now, when you start to feel a little bit anxious, you start to feel the thoughts kind of like bring you to the left, to the right. It's really important that you understand that the breath has the ability to kind of bring you into the body. And that's been something, a practice of mine that I've been really like nurturing and cultivating, because I understand that if you control your breath, you control your body. If you control your body, you control your mind. You control your mind, you control your reality. So all of this is tied together. And it's the simplest thing. We don't think about it. You think about breathing like you don't think about it, but you're just like walking. But it's something that you do every day. And the quality of the breath definitely matters. And it can marinate and put the spice into the situation where if you're not doing it the correct way and you're not aware of it, the emotion can drive you away and just kind of like carry you away. So it's really important that when you start to feel a little bit overwhelmed from the thoughts, right? A lot of people, when they start to feel anxious, they go to the mouth breathing, they go to the hyperventilation, right? What you're actually doing is you're inhibiting more of a stressful response, because your body thinks that it's running from a fucking predator.
It doesn't know
right?
the difference.
That's no difference.
Our bodies don't actually know the difference between sometimes the stress that we have from just being in a fixed position, or the stress that comes from an Instagram post, or the stress of seeing a spider. It doesn't actually differentiate what is actual real life threatening danger and which is regular danger. So regardless, the fight or flight response is still there. And that is what kills us. Because we're living in that state of fight or flight.
Perpetual state of fight or flight, because we have this idea that it's push. The person that while you're asleep, someone's getting better, someone's getting your job, shit like that.
Yes.
That idea that
where does that come from? I know where it comes from. It's like this innate desire to have to be better than the other person, because somehow that is a coping mechanism for us to, well, if I'm better than them, at least I'm not the worst person. That means I'm okay.
I think it's more like that idea of push without the rest comes from the fact that we're looked at as cogs in the workforce, and rest isn't isn't good for productivity, isn't good for money. So they plant this idea in your head very early that if you don't rest, yeah, exactly. That's so we have to shift this. We have to shift this paradigm. We have to create this awareness in people that, you know, work, productivity, and growth doesn't happen in a big fucking like exponential boom. It does sometimes, but it's coupled with increments of rest. Increments of growth happen in the rest. So the rest is an integral part, the yin to the yang. It's part of the dualistic nature of this universe. Without the is or the out, they need each other, right? So if you neglect the rest and you're just in that perpetual state of parasympathetic response, sympathetic response, you create an imbalance in the body, and that's how you start to that's how the thoughts become stronger. You know, it's like your body wants to run, it wants to like release this energy, but it can't because you're sitting down and you're allowing the thoughts to drive you with the fucking feelings. You know, I think I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the ability of exercise to release that tension so that the emotion and the feeling isn't as overwhelming as it is unheralded. You know, a lot of people like don't key into that. That's a really great way of mitigating making decisions in an emotional state. You know, when you're mad, what do? You like with me, when I'm mad, when I feel like I'm a little bit out of sync, there's a lot of dissonance inside of me, I roll it out either with a really good sequence, like a 1 hour sequence, banging out a workout, and then you fuck with the feeling, because you don't have the tension in the body that's already overwhelming with the feeling. You're only stuck with the feeling, you know? So in a way, the release of that, is a little bit of a catharsis that allows us to kind of deal with the emotion and the feeling a lot better, more adeptly.
Before we close, I want to talk about, you know, obviously, so then what do you do when you have that clarity and we say that it's just about practicing that awareness? Then, well, not really clarity. We have the awareness of how we've been conditioned, and finding acceptance to simply just bring our attention to the breath, bring our attention to the present, and actually teaching ourselves, more importantly, to slow down first. Teaching ourselves to get out of the multitasking mindset and to really try to hone our awareness into the present. And funnily enough, when we were able to practice this and get the body engaged to, like you said, you know, to enforce your parasympathetic response, to bring back balance. A lot of the times when we bring balance back to the body, we're in a better place to bring balance back into the mind. And we're in a better place to understand how to direct our attention. And we're smart enough people to say, like, how am I going to discover myself? Well, first, learn how to focus your attention. When you learn that, how to focus your attention, then you can focus your attention on the question, who am I? And guess what? Because you have a better understanding of how to use your awareness, when you ask yourself, who am I? You will be equipped to find the answer. But we need to build that awareness and that focus first. And then we can spend the time seeking the clarity. And guess what? Clarity doesn't mean that it's going to come back in that one big time. It's like what you said, David. It's like we're looking for the eureka moments, the aha moments. That's why we're always waiting on one day when I get a job that's sustainable. One day when I have enough recognition. One day when I'm settled down. That's not going to happen. Because we cannot wait on the big aha moments. Sometimes it happens, but a lot of the times it's in the process, it's in the habits, it's in the little baby steps. And it doesn't mean it has to be the baby steps of the actual work. Let's say I'm in business development and I want to, or no, let's say like I want to build a record company with all these albums. Doesn't mean I have to work myself to the bone to get the best of that project or that job. I don't have to keep doing more of the task. Sometimes it's refining the system over the task. Who is the system? It is our engine. It's us. We're the ones operating the task. And so if we are in a better place, if our engine is refined, if our system is in its optimal state, then we don't need to do more. Not more is more. No, don't do more. Be more. And eventually what you will do will be more.
So let me just add on that. Like I'm gonna piggyback on that right now. Fix the machine and everything. It's more or less
Yeah,
fixing the machine, the meat machine, right? And everything else follows, right?
yeah.
In a sense. So just
And that's the
allowing,
source.
yeah, taking care of yourself, taking care of the content that you're consuming, and just it starts with that.
Yeah,
I think a big thing is just starting off with the content that you
yeah,
consume, and
yeah.
yeah, and
And
not inhibiting that response of stress through
yeah.
that.
And I think community support, accountability is the best way to do that, because it's one thing like when we make the decision that say like I'm gonna be intentional about taking care of my well-being because that's the source that operates everything else. It's not enough to say that for myself. It's at the end of the day, community support, accountability, human connection, contribution, that is our driving force. That is the oxygen of our life. It's love, it's connection, it's how we serve other people. That is what actually brings meaning and fulfillment. um, and that's just fact. And so when we
Facts.
bring the connection and contribution into that aspect, it's seeking the support, but also in the action of seeking support with accountability, with the way that we're vulnerable with each other. I can seek your support, but because I'm being vulnerable and extending that, it gives you then the courage to seek my support and to be okay to be
The
vulnerable.
reaction.
Yeah,
The
and then
reaction.
comes this give and take. And then when
Yeah.
I share with you, obviously my vulnerabilities, then we don't need to fix each other's problems. It's just the action of speaking it out loud. So many times we leave things in our heads, and I think it's so dangerous when we do that. Commit it to paper, but commit it to someone in front of you. Just speak it out loud. Then you actualize it. Then you can process and understand it. Sometimes you don't even need to say anything. And then I have a better understanding of what to do. But the great thing of this accountability thing, of this relationship, is that you remind me of who I am when I forget myself.
That's very true. You definitely, I think we definitely do that for each other. I'm so fucking grateful that I've got Miss Elle Adda to be able to kick my ass every now and then,
Don't kick your
slap some
butt. You're
sense into
doing
me,
awesome.
slap some sense into me. It's also just being. Sometimes the thing is, when we have our sessions about when we talk, when we have these vulnerable moments, sometimes we just stay there in silence. It's not about having an answer to it. It's
Yeah.
just about being present with it, and like you said, speaking
Listen.
it to existence and self-actualizing
Yeah.
and working from there.
Yeah.
Because once you speak it out into existence, then it starts to have a name or form, and you're able
Yeah.
to deal with that name and
And
form, and
it's
you're
not
able
who
to
you are.
manipulate it.
You give it a
Yeah,
name, you realize it's not Elle. This is
yeah,
not, I am not anxious. I
yeah.
I'm experiencing an anxious thought. I am not anxious. I am not hopeless. I have
We get
feelings
married to
of
the
hopelessness.
idea of it.
Yes.
We
And
get
it's
married to
that
the idea of it.
connection when we can just be able to speak and have that safe space more than anything to be. And I dare you guys, I challenge everyone to have one moment of vulnerability today, and you can choose whoever it's going to be with, where you just open up, and you'll be amazed at how much strength will come propelling itself towards you when you reveal a little bit, not of your weakness, but you reveal a little bit of just your natural human nature. And when we do that, we have this connection. When you are able to sit with your pain and have someone sit with your pain with you and still be there when you're done, that's the point, right? That's why are we here? If it's not for that, if it's not to experience moments like that, where there is no suffering, there can be no compassion, there can be no empathy, there can be no moments of understanding, intimacy, true deep intimacy that is born in the crucible of suffering.
Can I add something to that? Just like our boy Jim Carrey says, I listen to one of his speeches every night, but he talks about um, you can play the game of form, fight the wars, sing the songs, but the only time you will ever actually have peace is when you take the armor off. I think
You
that
say that
really,
one more time.
I forgot. I can't say it anymore. It's like got into oblivion, got into my
Ay,
consciousness.
nako. And then one of the other great things that that David and I are able to do, and that we should actually, this is something, we'll be vulnerable. This is something we actually need to develop, is how the next stage, so that we're not always just these people who are complaining to one another, saying this is why my life is dog. But what it's so important to then say, okay, this is what I feel. This is my raw, authentic self. Now, what am I going to do about it? And I think that, it's not about tough love. It's about saying, like, declaring and being accountable to someone, and declaring, because being accountable means that you show value in your work. And when you put integrity in your work, it means you put integrity in yourself. And so when I declare it out loud and say, David, I've told you my hardships and my challenges. Either we work through them together, we talk about different solutions we can come up with, but at the end of the day, I have to make the decisions and choose for myself. I want to choose to take direction over my life and not succumb to what is. And so I'm going to say, just David, you know what? I'm going to make a commitment to you that this month, let's make it really, really small. I'm going to start by meditating twice a day. And I'm going to say what I'm grateful for. And it doesn't even have to be like that. I'm going to cure cancer, or my goal can be, hey, David, my goal is to think less negatively about myself. What's a great way for me to do that? Then we declare with each other, this is the habit that I want to work on, that to get to what I want to be and who I want to be. And then when we say that, you know that studies show that you're 95% more likely to complete a task if you commit to another person and you have a meeting and you talk about it. That accountability. It's not that there's going to check up on you. It's because you take ownership of the words and the commitments that come out of your mouth, especially when you say it to a friend. And that is what helps us. And that's, David, if you're okay, I just like volunteered you. Can we start doing that more often?
Dude,
Yeah, because
don't we kind of do that already? Like, bro, it's like, we have our this whole lockdown. I think right now it's just about
David doesn't want to do any more work. I keep throwing work.
No, not at all. We're doing this. So okay, okay. So vulnerability part, what do you want to work on first? Let's go. Let's shoot with you. What are you gonna do the twice a day meditation?
We've got 5 minutes, and then we're gonna have to peace out. Okay, so let's say, no, let's be honest. I want to work on my discernment, and that is my confidence in myself. And so that when I come up with an idea or an action or something, or a thought that I feel like I'm called to, that I don't let fear or my self-esteem talk me out of it, but instead I want to be courageous in pursuing it head on, rather than trying to play it safe.
Can I steal that from you?
Yeah. I think that, well, David and I are very, very, we're fortunate enough to have very similar dispositions, and so it's good
about technology.
He usually helps me. We end up stealing each other's homework.
All right. Yeah. All right. Let me rephrase it a little bit, but I think that's something that even we talked about in our engaged group, that I want to be able to kind of put myself out there a little bit more, whether it's sharing information and just putting a platform a little bit more, just not be so afraid to put myself out there. I think that's the biggest thing, very, very actually just like you said. So just be accountable in that sense, and doing it in increments, I guess, like you talk about, like Kaizen, just like one thing at a day. So,
so let's say, like, what are we going to do for what are we going to try and practice to help us with these goals? What can we do?
Fear, what do you call that? What do you call that? Fear exposure, right? Mm-hmm. Increments of fear exposure. So if I say that social media is like a monster or a fear that I have, maybe post something once a week, something like that.
That's good.
So, and not be afraid to do something that you love,
Yeah.
or that moves you. I think that you can fail at what you don't love, so might as well take a chance at what you
Yeah.
do love.
Yeah.
So,
That's
you know.
awesome. Awesome. David, is there anything that you want to say before we close out?
Um, Shit. I think I can just say I'm just very, very
And we're
grateful.
done.
We're off the air. No more. We're off the air. We have this heated. I think I can say that I'm just very grateful for being able to kind of like have conversations like this on the regular, and just always having these conversations about self-awareness and where we're at and stuff. I'm just very grateful for that, and also grateful that we're actually able to share to whoever's watching, and hopefully create a little bit of insight from that as well. Yeah, I'm really happy with where I'm at, and I'm really happy with where you're at in the work that you're doing, and yeah, let's just continue to ride this wave.
That's awesome. David, thank you so much.
And thank you for having me as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guys,
Very, very grateful for that.
if there's
Okay.
anything that I really, really wanted for you all to get out of this podcast, and I think that David's done an excellent job at delivering that message, is that this is a very overwhelming time, and that's okay. It's okay to not be okay. We've all been there. We're all there, whether we admit it to each other or not. We're all there. I still have moments when I'm there. We have them all the time. That's just who we are.
Yep.
But the point is that to have the courage to share it with someone. I wonder if you'll do that for yourself. And if you'll do it, not just for yourself, you'll do it for whoever that person is. Because there's so much power. So there's so much resilience that comes from allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, even with just one person. There's so much that comes without not even trying to fix anything. It is just a testament to what our humanity needs. We need to express ourselves. We need to be authentic. We need to be exposed. And the only way to make that less scary is to be brave enough to share it to one person, who will then prove to you that even when you expose yourself, that you are worthy of love, you are worthy of great things, and you're good enough. Why? Because why the fuck not? So guys, if you need a community, and you don't have one, we will be part of your community. So please just send us a Facebook message. We'll invite you to the Breakthrough in Action group. We meet every week. Guys, please let us know how you do this week. Let us know if you were able to share with someone. And again, David, thank you so much for coming and being a part of this. Guys, I'm going to post the link to the Zoom link for our workshop session tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about active recovery and all those things that we were saying, how we're able to use our breath and our awareness in our bodies to bring ourselves in the present moment. We're talking about active recovery, alignment, mobility, range of motion, tension release, and breath work, and how that's going to be able to ground us not only in the foundation for our physical internal health, but also to teach us resilience and teach us how to focus that awareness. End of the day, focus your awareness, focus and direct your reality, direct your experience, direct your life. All right. Have a beautiful rest of your weekend, guys. See you later. Mwah. David, love you.
Love you all. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Bye.